Today, I think I'm going to surprise you with a fruit and seeds, but we're going to go into that a little bit later.
So lots are going on in this kitchen right now. And I'm going to tell you a little history on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And well, if it works out, we could save thousands. Thousands? So I set up the island right now to go through what I've been growing in this little pencil box. I still have to get my culantro out, but I got all my dragon fruit out. And I'll go over exactly how I started this and when I started this, because I've got my notes on my tablet with everything I had. And what I did back in October is I found the yellow dragon fruit at the grocery store. And well, you know what? Let me turn this around and show you exactly what I found and what was successful and what wasn't, because some of it wasn't. But we ended up with some really good success as far as plants, and now is the waiting game.
So last year, back in October, I went to the store and it was the first time I had seen yellow dragon fruit available for sale. So I looked through them. They had the red and the yellow ones. You know, some of them had stems and that one did not. Seeing that they did have a little bit of the plant left, I thought, you know, it may be worth a try. So I went through all of them and I picked out a couple of the nicest ones. Maybe something that would give us hope that we could get it to root. So I went through, and as you can see here, the red ones did not. Most of the red ones had it completely snapped off, but I wasn't looking for a red one anyways. But the yellow ones did have a little bit. So I picked out a couple of them, and I figured, you know, it's worth a shot. In the meantime, we're still going to eat the fruit. We're going to try them. And it was a nice display they had. They all looked really nice and healthy in there. So upon getting them home that night, Gary went through and on both of them and very carefully removed the stem, the part of the dragon fruit plant, in hopes not to hurt it, and maybe he can get them off and do something with it. So the first one came off quite nicely, as you can see. There it is. And like I said, it's worth a try. Not going to hurt anything, you know, for trying. And then he took the second one off and just kind of slid around a little bit. But he wanted to make sure he didn't crack it. He wanted to get the whole thing off in one nice piece. And after a little careful work and going slowly, so he doesn't damage it too much, he did manage to get it off, as you can see here. Now he had two pieces. Were they going to make it? We didn't know. But we figured we'd try it. Plus, we have never tried any yellow dragon fruit, and there they are. Both stems looking nice off of each fruit. Now the thing was, how was he going to start it? He read up, and there were a couple different ways of doing it, but it's still, you really need a little bit more than an inch piece. But he figured he has nothing to lose, so we had a couple shot glasses here, and we thought we'll stand them up, and of course the point end that grows out from the plant goes up, and the part that came off, as you can see where it was cut, would go down into the shot glass. So we carefully put each one into the shot glass, made sure the cut end was down, and it was nice and dry, so it wasn't going to rot. It was calloused over, which it should be. And then he just put it in there, and he put bottled water in. We didn't want to use tap water because we have chlorine in there, the way they treat the water, and we wanted to make sure this little tiny plant doesn't get that. So we used bottled water, nice clean water. And so you can see that the top part is above the water and just the base was in the water. Now it was the waiting game on them to see how they would go, and he set them up. They sat there, they looked pretty good, and as time went on, you could see now one of them did start to develop a few roots, but all in all, it never got as far as it should have, and eventually the plant fizzled out. So this didn't work, and the best thing at this point would be to just go buy a plant, but they're quite pricey. And I'll tell you something, we ate those yellow fruits, and they were sweeter and better than the red ones. That's why at this point, we were thinking no matter what, we're going to buy some yellows, but it didn't make it. So now back to the seeds. Now Gary took some of the seeds and he planted them his way, and he's got them in his room, and some of his are growing, and I planted some of them in a pencil box with soil, potting soil mixed with some kitty litter. I like kitty litter because it retains water and also gives good drainage. And you know what? Lo and behold, it took a few months for them to start to grow, but they did grow. I also took the remainder of the seeds that Gary said there were too many, and I put them in a container, snapped it shut, so I have both growing. But the ones in the pencil box look much nicer. Now it's time to pot them up. Now, don't worry, I'm going to speed through this because it's too long. But anyways, what I did was I used about 3 scoopers of potting soil and 1 to 2 scoopers of kitty litter. It works really good for cactus and succulent type plants, and that's what I'm considering these right now. And as you can see here, I had pulled them out with a tweezers. Now, why a tweezers? I'll slow it down for a minute. These have a lot of needles on them, spines, and if they get on you, the yellow dragon fruit has more spines than the red, and even the baby plants have them, especially the ones that grew in the pencil box because they look quite healthy. Don't ask me why, I can't tell you that. Why the pencil box over the other container, but it worked really good in there. And you'll see they have a very small root system, but I can't touch the top of that plant. It will get into your skin and it's going to be a nightmare to get them out. So I used the tweezers and I carefully put it in this little 2-inch pot. The reason I like these 2-inch pots, I did a whole video on it, is I can just load them into the shoebox. And as you saw, that's a shoebox to the right. I put potting soil and kitty litter on the bottom, so when I water it, the water will drip down into the bottom and it will keep it a little bit damp. You don't want to overwater these and keep them too damp, but it helps retain the water in the soil instead of having water floating around. And it works really good. It also helps to regulate temperature for them. Very natural and as if they were outside. So I had to carefully take out all these plants that were growing in the pencil box. The ones to the right, the big green ones, that is culantro, another plant that sometimes is hard to start when it's not warm enough. They're doing really good, but they're going to be moved at another time. Right now, I'm only doing the yellow dragon fruit. And I'm going to do them all, even the teeny ones, because maybe once they're potted, they'll do good. See how small the root system is? There's almost no roots because they really depend on the air to collect water and what they need. But they don't have a super big root system, but they still do. So feeding them, compost tea, anything as they grow will be very, very good. So I'm going to continue to get these all potted up in this mix I made that works really good, and it does work for succulents as well if you're into succulents. And I'm going to get them all in there and we'll take a look at them when I'm all done. Now here I'm just zipping through and they're all being planted the same way. I'm kind of pressing the soil into the pot and then making a little hole for the little bit of roots and standing them up. Now this one fell over in the pencil box and see how it's kinked? So the body of it is bent as well as the top. I'm going to have to do something with that one, and you'll see what I'll do with that in a minute. It was unbelievable, but it works. So anyways, I got that one pried in there very carefully, added in some extra soil and kind of pressed it in. Again, I cannot touch the top because of those spikes are very fine and they'll go right into your skin. So I went ahead and put a little bit of kitty litter around to kind of give it more of stability to hold the plant up because I need it to straighten out because it wants to grow sideways. But I came up with something else you'll see in a minute. But all of them got planted. All of them are now in pots. And now it's just a matter of waiting to see how fast they grow and when they'll be going outside. And here is a super tiny one. Nice thick leaves or whatever you want to call it, a trunk, but I got that planted too. All of them got planted. Every single seed that grew for me was put into a pot. Because here's the thing, not all plants are created equal. So if they all start to grow and grow fruit, then you got to taste each one to see which one is the best. And you may have to taste it in 2 seasons because sometimes the first season may not be the best, but the second one is better. You never know, weather conditions, soil conditions. So if they all make it or a bunch of them make it, we're going to have to find the spot somewhere on the property where we have them all in probably containers and babying them to wait and see when they fruit to see how they do. But even the teeniest ones, because you never know, it might be the tiniest one that's going to give us the best fruit of them all. Now remember that little wonky one that's really long and it's kinked because it fell over and I didn't get it straight up? Well, Guess what? I'm using my 1/4-inch irrigation tubing. I love that stuff. You better go buy that and get that in your house and keep it for all kinds of things. Now, since I'm going to make something to give it good stability, I went ahead and put 2 pieces of wire inside that tubing. So I just cut a short piece, about 5 inches, 6 inches, and I slid 2 pieces of the rebar wire inside because when I bend that, I want it to be really stiff and hard. You actually can get 3 in there, but that's too much. 2 has always been perfect for me. Now I'm bending it in half, and it's going to be really stiff, and it's going to slide into that little 2-inch pot, and guess what? It works perfect. It is now holding up that dragon fruit, and hopefully now, being exposed to sunlight, it will start to straighten out. That's what I'm hoping. But can you believe 1/4-inch irrigation tubing that I'm using all over the garden now, and I know so many of you are too? You can use that in 2-inch pots. I mean, is that not too cool? Love it. Now, before we leave this, I wanted to show you, see these that are real thin that are growing in that container? It was a closed container. I mean, they still grew. See how wimpy they are? There was a big difference between growing in a pencil box and growing in the container. But those I can handle a little bit. On the bottom, they don't have any spikes or thorns, but I've got to be very careful because the top does. But see how skinny they are? But I think with a little loving care, some of these will probably take off as soon as our weather gets warm and they get to be exposed to the natural sunlight. So I got a lot of those potted up too. And now we'll wait and see how they grow. Now they just need some loving care. I'm going to water them good and put them in Gary's room in the sunlight.
So I hope I gave you some tips and tricks on how to grow dragon fruit if you want to do it for fun instead of getting cuttings. And who would have believed that I would be using 1/4-inch irrigation tubing to stand this little guy up who fell over and started to grow up the wrong way, so now we've got to redirect it. Isn't that funny? And there I had to go run, get my irrigation tubing. It worked! And that's the main thing. So for now, we'll all wait and see, and let's hope that some of them are going to taste really good. So with that, have a wonderful day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye! This is a different place to do it. Most of the stuff in here belongs to my granddaughter. It's pretty in here. How did it become her kitchen?
So now all the dragon fruit is in Gary's room. This is a really nice warm room. I like hanging out in there too, and there they are. And soon I'll get the rest of them all potted up. Isn't that cool? That's a pretty place to get to look out into the bird garden. So I'll end this with a special note, a surprise note. We had a dragon fruit that was left on the plant this winter, and Gary had actually brought it into the back room with the plant. Now, when we cut it open to eat it, and let me tell you, he did eat the other half. Look at the seeds, they're growing. What are these seeds growing in? A fruit that's been sitting for what? 4, 5 months, and there's no soil. It is growing in the matter in which it grew. And for those of you that tell me I cannot compost in place and grow seeds at the same time in plants, well, this is proof. This is Mother Nature, and this is how things were intended to grow. But anyways, I thought I'd show you, and now I may or may not plant these because I have tons of red dragon fruit. We want to plant yellow dragon fruit, but keep that in mind. This is how Mother Nature works.